Are you going to count me in?
Oh
yeah.
No,
I'm just kidding.
We'll do it. Let's do it like a broadcast show.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. It's here, the most celebrated day in America, the day we fire explosives into the air to celebrate the brave actions of Captain Stephen Hiller, who took to the skies to protect Earth from invading alien spaceships and had the good sense to avoid doing a sequel. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Is that Randy Quaid? Are you talking about Randy Quaid in Independence Day?
No, that's Will Smith's character.
He didn't save
Captain
us from the
Stephen
aliens.
Hiller.
Wow. He didn't save us, bud.
How did he not?
It was Randy Quaid's character.
Yeah, who crashed
flew
into
his
the-
F-16 into the alien warship, saving all of humanity.
And how was he able to do that?
Because Jeff Goldblum's character developed a virus.
And how did Jeff Goldblum get up there?
Okay, Will Smith is the delivery guy, okay? He literally just flew a ship straight up.
This is so
That
like
was
you.
it.
The people who do the hard work on the ground are the ones that don't get recognized.
Are we going there again? I said I'm sorry. I will agree. You are the Will Smith and I am the Jeff Goldblum of our relationship. I'm fine with that. That works.
You know what? I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, no, that works for both of us. I think I'm good with that. One of my favorite gifs is Jeff Goldblum's character with his shirt open in Jurassic Park when he's like laying back trying to seduce Helen Hunt. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
No.
Do you know what Jurassic Park is?
No, it's a movie. I think
Let's go back to Independence Day. So it's July 4th when people are hearing this, and as people are hearing this, you and I are probably celebrating. I am seeing patients in the morning time anyway. What are you doing on July 4th?
I have no plans yet.
Really?
Nothing planned.
You don't go out? You don't do anything?
Well, we'll probably walk down the street and watch the fireworks on the strip.
Okay, this
we
strip
got
one?
Yeah, we got a strip view if we walk down to the end of the road.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, one of the best firework things in Nevada is actually in Pahrump because they sell all the illegal fireworks in Pahrump, but they require that you sign a contract saying you will have them out of the county within 5 hours of purchasing them. And so, like, it's interesting because, like, these huge stores and warehouses of illegal fireworks, they're legal there, are there, but to advertise and continue to, like, have their social contract with Nye County, they put on this stupid good firework display in Pahrump. And it's like nobody lives there. It's like 30,000 people.
Right.
So, like, it's huge, and it's, like, world class. Like,
I didn't
it's
even
really
know
good.
about that.
Oh, it's amazing. And they do it over the only park that's in Pahrump. First time I went, my in-laws, at the time, they weren't my in-laws, I don't think. Oh, actually, I wasn't married yet first time I went there. And we lay on the grass, eyes up, up into the sky. These fireworks were so huge and fired so near that there was, like, fiery ash shards landing next to me. I was freaking out. Yeah. There was actually a little booth that caught on fire. It was really scary.
That's when you know you're at a good show.
Oh, yeah. That's county fair level.
Yeah,
like,
that's
rural Pahrump doing their fireworks display. There's no OSHA. There's no fire marshal. Nobody cares. They just do whatever they want.
Back home in Iowa, we've got a little bit more strict rules and laws as far as fireworks go. However, there's all sorts of ways around that. Because now one of the biggest things to do is they will actually take this is so Iowa. They'll take just a huge barrel and fill it with corn dust and diesel fuel.
What?
With a fuse. And they just light it on fire.
It's
not
bomb?
even it's not even a firework. It just explodes, and it's this huge ball of fire.
That sounds super cool, though.
Oh, it is really cool.
That's really funny.
Like, if you could be like 100 yards away from this thing.
There's no topography in Iowa.
No.
You could probably see it from 100 miles away.
Well, no, it's not even it's not even seeing it.
Okay.
It's feeling it.
Oh my gosh.
Because you see that huge fireball explosion, and then a few seconds pass, and then this wave of heat just hits you.
You can feel like a shock wave, and you
Yeah,
feel heat.
of
Oh my
heat.
gosh. Dude, you just described a giant stick of dynamite.
Yeah,
like, that's
pretty
not
much.
okay.
Yeah.
There's got to be something about this.
Yeah, but it's not a firework, so there's no laws.
No, there's no law against it. We wouldn't have anything dangerous.
Right.
What are those M80s? Hands behind your back, sir.
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry. Is that a Roman candle? Get in the car. Sir, what is that? Giant trash can filled with racing fuel and corn dust.
Yeah, diesel fuel and corn dust.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Is that a fuse? Yeah.
Yeah.
Carry on. Thank you for loving America, sir. Well, in celebration of Independence Day and July 4th and the 50 great American states, we have looked up...
Nice segue.
Thank you. We looked up the 50 most interesting psychology facts that everyone should know, and some of them might surprise you. According to the powerofpositivity.com, they gathered together 50 facts. Interesting side note is there is absolutely no citation on any of these alleged facts.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, Nick, I'm not disappointed in because the power of positivity probably has no citation to it whatsoever either.
But you know what's cool, though? Like, I would give some credence and credibility to this because I know some of them actually are true.
Yeah, that is true. Like, there's some of them that definitely jump out that I'm like, oh, yeah, that's true. So just in case you're worried, we are not going to be going through all 50. Nick and I have both selected 5, which we found the most interesting. How many did you pick?
10.
Oh, man, that took you forever. 10. I said we'll each pick 5, and therefore we will have a total of 10.
Okay.
We don't have that kind of time on this show.
Okay.
So
I'm going to have to...
Now you got to pick your top 5 out of your top 10. But fast enough that you can parlay with me, because I'm only going to do the first one, and then you're on your own.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we will each present our 5 top ones and discuss. But again, if you want to see the whole list, you can drop down into the description of this episode, and of course it will be there for your clicking pleasure. So the fact, one of the 5 that I found the most interesting, according to Power of Positivity, was actually the first one. Number 1, research has found that good relationships are more important to a long life than exercise. I am banking on that one.
Okay,
I am banking on That's all I'm holding on to, Tangent.
I saw that one and I knew you were going to.
You don't need to go to the gym. Just make a friend. What this fact teaches us,
you're
Nick,
screwed on both of
No.
those.
Yeah, exactly. You lonely fat piece of... What I'm saying is you are more healthy by meeting your friend at the bar than you are by going to the gym alone. Okay? That's what I heard in this one. Okay. Luckily, these are psychology facts and probably not like nutrition or physiology or medical facts. So,
right.
I sign on, though. That has the Jim Jobin stamp of approval. I'm not even going to question it. I don't want a citation. It feels right.
It fits with what you already believe, so you're just going to roll with it.
Alternative facts.
I think that's confirmation bias. I think that's what we call that.
I'm good with it.
Okay, here's one that's interesting. Your decisions are more rational when thought in another language.
Your decisions are more rational when you think it in another language.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're bilingual
Yeah.
and you want to make a decision and then you process it and think about it in your second language, your decision is going to be more rational.
Okay, that is spooky as that wants to sound.
It makes sense.
It just makes sense, right? Because you're inherently going to slow down your thinking.
Yeah.
You've got to translate ideas into words, which means you have to qualify them and think of synonyms while you're doing it, right?
Yep.
That totally makes sense. Are you bilingual?
Not yet.
Oh, that's right. Aren't you doing like Babbel or something? Or
no, Duolingo.
Duolingo? Are you trying to pick up Spanish?
Okay, so I did. I started with Spanish.
Okay.
And then
you finished it so fast.
No, not yet.
You're doing great, Nick.
I started with it because I'm like, this is the most practical.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I don't want to be practical. I want to be fun. I want to learn something else.
Really?
So then I started French.
Should learn Yiddish.
And then I started with French, and I'm like, no, screw that.
To all of our French listeners who feel insulted that Nick just called your entire language impractical.
I didn't say it was impractical. Oh, well, did I say it was impractical?
And they are appalled.
Impractical because it's very difficult.
On this holy day.
Anyway.
A day that the French and the great Lafayette.
There's still 2 other languages I want to learn.
There are more than 2.
I want to learn German.
You're a bigot.
And I want to learn Swedish.
Okay.
And
they're both really reaching for the least likely to be useful.
No, but I know. But I'm going back to Spanish. I'm going to get...
You've gone full circle.
So I am working on my Spanish.
Okay.
I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to focus on that. But my goal is to learn it well enough to where I can communicate on, fairly well, and then I want to go to a different language.
Okay. Well, yeah, why don't we just go in baby steps?
Yeah. Right.
Let's get you through English there, Iowa.
I know.
Does Laura speak Spanish?
Oh, yeah.
Then why are you not picking that? Then you could at least have a conversation partner. Yeah, and then you gave up on it.
I know. Well,
because
it was hard to it.
Because you were like, this is way too applicable to my life and my girlfriend who lives with me. I want to speak a language she doesn't know. So
I don't speak to her in my primary language. Why would I speak to her in the second?
I'm going to make her learn German.
Right.
All right. My next choice is number 12 in the list of 50. And it was opposites don't attract. You're more likely to be attracted to someone who looks and thinks the same as you do. Yeah. And that is true.
Yeah, you've said that on this show.
The book that's on my desk right here, Intimate Relationships, actually does go through the science of that and talks about how, it has to do with human evolutionary biology, that tribes of humans would have been more likely to protect their own and look for physical characteristics that looked safe and similar to themselves, because that would have been trustworthy back then. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that's necessarily gone away, though, of course, we have lots of interracial couples. I'm part of an interracial couple. And obviously it doesn't matter anymore, and humans like what they like. But on average, humans are more likely not just to be attracted to their own physical characteristics. There's science that actually says you are more likely to end up with somebody whose name starts with the same first letter as yours.
Really?
Yep. And in my family, that's true.
Wow.
Not in a lot, but in a lot of people's that's the case. So if you're Donald, you're more likely to end up with Daisy. If you're Mickey, you're more likely to end up with Minnie.
Wow.
So that's science.
That's interesting.
And Disney.
Okay.
And as well as personality traits, you are actually more likely to date somebody similar to yourself, obviously not identical, but having certain similar views or even values, then you would be more likely to pick up an opposite.
And that makes sense to me.
Even though everybody goes through their bad boy phase, I did.
Right.
But eventually you grow out of it and you settle down with a sensible fella.
Right.
All right, what's your next one?
Next one. No one born blind has ever developed schizophrenia.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
Yeah, isn't it?
That is really interesting. The original theory of schizophrenia, by the way, one of the most interesting areas of mental health history. If you ever want to study, the history of mental illnesses and how things came about, schizophrenia was one of the first ones that was really interesting to psychologists because it had such clear psychotic qualities. And it was originally theorized that people get schizophrenia from their mothers, not genetically, but from behavior.
Right.
And the belief was that if your mother sent you mixed signals, such as praising you one minute and criticizing you the next, if that was sufficiently confounding, the belief at the time was that a person would develop this dissociation with reality, and that was schizophrenia, which, again, schizophrenia, I believe, is German for ripped apart, to break apart. And so, but it's interesting that nobody born blind has ever developed it.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Which I guess my theory would be that has something to do with the visual cortex then? I don't know.
Yes. I don't know.
That's so
I have
interesting.
no idea.
There's another argument that those who hear voices, which not all people with schizophrenia do, that it might have something to do with their brain's ability to detect causation and their brain's ability to track time, and that they're actually hearing that voice in the beginning because it's their own voice responding to something else that's happened or is about to happen, but they're distracking out of time, and so that voice develops over time, and then the subconscious just fills it with usually negative voice or negative criticism.
Wow.
But obviously these are theories.
Right.
Like there's nothing there. So
yeah.
But interesting little fact. All right. So my next one is number 4. Optimistic beliefs about the future can protect people from physical and mental illness, therefore justifying faith. Done.
Oh, wow.
Convert.
Okay. Okay.
I win.
You called that one pretty quickly.
Just figured I wanted to parlay that right into where it's going. So the point is, optimistic beliefs, regardless of their bearing on reality, have a placebo effect. There you go.
Which is interesting because
they should do a study to find out if religious people are healthy or not.
They've actually done studies about the power of prayer.
Oh, that's right.
Where people who knew they were prayed for actually did
better.
Worse.
Oh, they did worse?
They did worse.
Oh, is that the case?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they had groups of people. They had groups that weren't sure whether or not they were being prayed for.
Okay.
people that were told they're not being prayed for,
Okay.
and people that were told they are being prayed for.
Oh, interesting.
The ones that knew they were being prayed for did the worst out of all the groups.
So, besides that being a negation of the existence of the Almighty, I think that there's, besides that, I think that there's a secondary point to that, because I actually think I agree with that. I think it's that negative placebo effect of other people believing I am not okay and seeking help from God to save me. That would give me a fear.
What they believe happened with that was actually performance anxiety.
Oh, like
they
what
felt
if
like
I don't do okay?
Yeah, I'm being prayed for, therefore I better start doing well.
Oh, wow.
And then that created
So we got to lower those expectations. But if you individually have optimistic beliefs, you might end up faring better. So, interesting piece of psychology.
Right. Okay. The average high school kid today has the same level of anxiety as the average psychiatric patient in the early 1950s.
So the reason that I disagree with that one,
okay,
I think it has to do with scaling, and I think it has to do with perception. So back in the day, you and I would both agree. Oh, you know what? Before I even make this point, I will bet you that I can get you to agree with me on this. Well, first off, qualify your belief in that statement. The fact that you just read, what percentage of credo do you give it?
Oh, I don't know. Because how do they measure that? I guess that's kind of... There's a lot of things in here that I don't understand. Like, the average high school student has the same level of anxiety.
Yeah. So the implication is like life has become more stressful and that kids are ultimately experiencing objectively more anxiety.
Maybe. Yeah. Or maybe life hasn't become more stressful. Maybe our tolerance or our resilience has decreased.
That's how I was going to beat you. Or, ultimately you're on that side. Because you made the argument before that previous generations had a higher stress tolerance, that they accepted an amount of physical pain, didn't have, we've debated back and forth about whether or not they were experiencing mental illness and just had no cures for it, so they endured it, and they still died or used substance abuse, but we didn't track those things. Mm-hmm. But I would make that argument that, okay, the average psychiatric patient in the 1950s would have been culturally inculcated to play down their anxiety or their level of neurosis, right? I think that you'd play it down. Whereas in today's society, I think that we're so open about mental health and so open about the suffering of others that a child could culturally pick up that it's okay to talk about it or even embellish it.
Right.
And that they would actually be coddled. But
so society has changed.
I would argue that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I actually still agree with the point, though. I do think that there is more stress for a child today. I mean, between academic testing and the wide world of the internet, and I think they're stimulated by media and things like that, which I think has given them a lower attention span, and I think that ultimately does increase anxiety. Right. So, yeah, I actually don't disagree with that one. All right, number 14, around 80% of human talk in groups is complaining. I agree.
I
buy
agree
that.
too.
I buy that. Like that. As soon as I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's probably true.
I definitely. Yeah,
but what do you think the evolutionary reason for that is?
I think because here's my thought. Here's my guess.
Okay.
Because we need community, right? We have to feel like we're a part of a community.
Right.
And ultimately, one of the strongest things that binds us as a community is a shared obstacle.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
So if we are in a group and we have something to complain about, we can identify a problem, then we join together as a group and we're safer as a group.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting because it introduces a good question to organizational dynamics and whether you should allow your people to talk to one another. And I say no.
Oh, geez.
80% of those meetings are going to be anti the man. So if you're the
Next
man,
thing you know, they're
you got to put
unions.
your boot on it. That's right. Yeah. No free assembly in this organization. Get back to your cubicle.
Can't believe you got fired.
Can't trust the people. That's right. How did that happen? We were the man.
All right.
Last one from you.
People are more honest when they're physically tired. This is why people confess things during late-night conversations.
They're more honest when they are tired.
When they're physically tired.
I actually agree with that, even though I think it almost makes an argument for interrogation and for,
Yeah,
I don't know that I agree with that, but, yeah, okay, sleep deprivation makes somebody tired. I agree with that. I would also agree that sleep deprivation probably makes somebody less lucid and accurate. So they might be more honest but more delusional about what they're describing. Right. I wouldn't trust their facts if they were sleep deprived. Right. Though I guess I'd find them more motivated to share them. So I think that this is my fifth one, and I actually think by the math you have another one coming.
I do have another one, yeah.
So here's my last one. My last one is number 10. People with low self-esteem tend to try to humiliate others. I think that's true.
People with low self-esteem try. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those ones that we would all go, yeah, that's probably right. The people that we've met in life, bullies, kids that are bullies or people that pick on other people, we sort of common sense at this point know that person has lower self-esteem.
Right.
And so that's an interesting fact, but I find that empirically true.
Misery loves company, right?
Yeah, I would say insecurity tries to defray attention from itself and look at others.
Yeah, I'm just saying it was a saying.
It's fine.
A saying.
All right, calm down, Nick. You're fine. Nobody's here to hurt you.
I think I should improve on that.
This is a safe place.
All right, last one I got. Even the illusion of progress is motivating.
Oh, I agree with that.
100%. Yeah. And this actually, I picked this one because it reminded me of some research that I was involved in when I was an undergrad.
Okay.
Back at the University of Northern Iowa. I was working with Professor Dr. Macklin, who was researching gambling behavior.
Okay.
And we were specifically looking at what's known as the near-miss phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
Which basically is this, what we learn from behavioral psychology and, operant conditioning, that when you get a reward, then that increases the likelihood of you doing that behavior. Right? Well, what happens is behavior can be reinforced with no actual reward.
Right.
So like in the case of a slot machine where you win if you get
all the
3 sevens in a row.
Yeah.
Well, if you land at 7-7 and then you're halfway between 7 and another icon, so like right in the middle where you just miss it, that is just as reinforcing, and I think actually more reinforcing sometimes than actually hitting it.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so if you were able to manipulate the games, you can get people motivated and increase their motivation without giving anything up.
That's so powerful because and that's absolutely true. Like I know even in that scenario, your odds are no better that the next one's going to be a hit. But the perception is, I was so close.
I almost got it.
Almost. And it's like, dude, it's all random. Like, that doesn't increase your odds. Like, that's not any better than the one before, you know, but that illusion of progress, we're almost there, which I actually think is really true. Like, and I think that this could be used for positives or negatives. Like, the gambling effect is obviously a negative. It's taken advantage of humanity. I find that humans can also be able to accomplish great things if you get them to believe that you're almost there or that you're making progress even when you fail. And I think that a lot of therapists often reframe a failure or a negative moment as a learning opportunity or, it's a journey or whatever because we're trying to gain that motivation in the person to ultimately keep moving forward.
Right.
Rather than being deterred. Exactly. So I agree with that. The illusion of progress, which illusion not being a bad thing necessarily. So that's a great list. So if you'd like to see the rest of the 50, go into the description. You can browse around and see your favorite ones.
Powerofpositivity.com. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss how to know when you're healing. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop. Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop was an American statesman and founding father from Virginia, best known for the Hot Dog Resolution, the motion in the Second Continental Congress calling for the colony's independence from Great Britain. He was a signatory to the Articles of Confederation, and his Resolution for Independency of June 1776 led to the United States Declaration of Independence, which Nathan signed. He also served a one-year term as the president of the Congress of the Confederation and was a United States Senator from Virginia in 1789 to 1792, serving during part of that time as the second president pro tempore of the Upper House. If you'd like to join former President pro tempore, or whatever it is, of the United States Confederation or whatever the hell, Hot Dog Scoop, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about how to know when you are healing.
Before I read this, did you know, fun little U.S. history fact, because I don't know if you know this, but I used to teach U.S. history, so
Yes.
I'm a big fan of it. Did you know that this is not the first Constitution of the United States? The one that we currently have is not the first Constitution.
I think I did know that.
Yeah, it was just cited in that Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop bit, the Articles of Confederation. So when the United States first declared independence in 1776, that was not when the United States Constitution was ratified. That's just when we started a war, right? And so the Continental Congress, which everybody knows about, convened, and they wrote the Articles of Confederation. And the Articles of Confederation was a lot more states' rights and a lot less centralized, powerful government because, again, we hated that. We were scared of a monarchy, right? Ultimately, we got rid of the Articles of Confederation after we won the war. Right. And so the original United States of America started without a constitution. We were the Articles of Confederation. It was a confederacy. And that's why the Civil War was really an argument to go back to the Confederacy because they felt that the federal government had overstepped. Fun little fact. The Articles of Confederation was ultimately thrown away whenever there was an army that marched toward Washington, D.C., and George Washington didn't have enough federal power to stop it. And it was the bonus army that was coming for its money from the war. They were veterans that wanted their money, and Washington didn't have enough power, so they realized he was impotent, and we needed a strong centralized federal government. So we called another constitutional convention, and that's what ultimately created the U.S. Constitution, which was then ratified among the 13 original states. So, interesting
Who
fact.
said you wouldn't learn anything on Pod Therapy?
Most people.
True.
So this letter is called How to Know You're Healing. Hi, my question is, how do you know you're getting better or healing? I've been in therapy with the same person for 1 year, and I realized that I'm feeling better, and it feels different from where I have noticed improvement before. I'm not exactly sure how this is different, but it does feel different. So I'm curious to know, how are you supposed to know or realize when you are doing better and have made lasting change rather than feeling better for just a couple of short months and falling down yet again? Thanks, Anonymous.
Okay.
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I guess one thing that I want to point out right away is that you started off saying that you are feeling better. So I think that right there is a good indicator.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of different things that you can look at to know whether or not you are making progress. Because, after you've been in this for a year, you expect and you anticipate that things should be different. And sometimes it can be hard to recognize it.
Yeah.
So some things maybe, are you noticing a decrease in symptoms? You know, whatever the symptoms were that drove you into therapy, are you noticing any kind of decrease? And it can be difficult to assess that because it's like, how do you assess?
Because they were probably subjective symptoms in the beginning.
Exactly. So my next point then was maybe finding some measurable way to quantify whatever these symptoms are.
Right.
So like the use of scaling questions.
So what's your anxiety at a 1 through 10? And if when we first met you, you were telling that therapist, gosh, I'm at like a 7 out of 10, and here's what a 7 looks like. And then over time, you can now report that you're down to like a 2 or 3, and here's what that looks like. Okay, you're able to quantify using a number system that the anxiety is decreased.
Or even looking at what number on that scale do your symptoms become out of control.
Right.
So it's like, I feel out of control when I'm at a 5. And then now a year later, like, I feel like a 5 is manageable. I think now a 7 is when it's out of control. So you're seeing that your ability to control the symptoms is changing.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the heart of this question, what I really hear is like, when is therapy over? Right. And we've had a similar question like this before. And I think it's a really good one because the question is really, at what point have I gotten to a place where I am feeling better and like I can trust in that, right? So again, it depends on the symptom, right? Like if you have PTSD or anxiety, like I tell my anxiety people, you're going to have anxiety forever. Yeah. My job is to get it below a clinically significant amount of distress so that you now have tools to manage it, right?
Right.
Or like trauma may influence your life forever, but hopefully we can get the subjective amount of distress that you go through around that down to an operant level where you can live your life without running from options because they trigger you, right? We want you to be able to walk through that door instead of running from it. So usually whenever you start therapy, we draft a treatment plan.
Yeah.
And usually that's identifying what's your problem, what are the goals, and then what methods the therapist might use to help you like deal with those goals. And so it's very normal for a therapist to do these check-ins where they sort of try to figure out how are we doing compared to when I first met you. And it's also very normal for a therapist to even want to draft another treatment plan based on your progress or based on anything new that's become a new thing to like identify as a problem during your work together.
Yeah, treatment plans and goals and objectives are very important. I think that's sometimes when people feel like they're not making progress is when they actually never had good, solid goals or objectives to start with.
Yeah.
So it's you have got no measurement. You have nothing that you're really working on. Now, I think maybe it might be a good idea to answer the question that this writer may or may not be asking, which is not how do I know necessarily when I'm done, but what happens if I've been in treatment for a year or in therapy for a year and I don't feel like I'm making any progress?
Right.
What do we do in that situation? And I think in that situation, that's a good thing. You should be open and honest with your therapist and bring that up. And just because maybe that is an issue of maybe your goals and objectives need to change. Maybe what you created as your goals and objectives or what you and your therapist created as goals and objectives aren't actually the things that are impacting your life.
Yeah, and obviously in this writer's situation, he or she, or they, is declaring that they have had progress. But I think your point is still valid. Like if you're not experiencing progress, I have a lot of questions. How frequently are you meeting with the person? I've had people that come in to deal with anxiety, but they, during my first or second visit with them, admit that they're abusing substances as a way to self-medicate the anxiety. And it's very hard for me to make progress on their anxiety while they continue to abuse substances, right? If they're doing that regularly. And then that becomes another problem because like I have to help them get through a stage of change to like reach contemplation, preparation, and action to do something about the substance abuse. And so if you ask them like a year in, they might go, yeah, I really like seeing Jim. He's a good stabilizing force in my life. But no, I haven't decreased this problem yet. Well, okay, that might have been because I had to go through layers to get there. So I think that it's complicated. But I think another thing that this question begs is if you're seeing a provider, if you're seeing a therapist and you're seeing them through insurance, there's a very strict protocol that the therapist has to go through in order to see you. They have to tell your insurance what's wrong with you. Yeah. And that could be not a violation of your privacy, but you might not feel great about that. I've had people that, work for the government or, work for the military, the police that are like, keep it off the books. I don't want anything to ever go in my personnel file. And even though I tell them that won't happen, I can't guarantee that it won't happen. But if you work with an insurance, your therapist has to identify goals for you, and they kind of have to report back to the insurance, usually every 4 to 6 sessions, if not faster than that, with these progress reports to talk about whether or not you're making progress towards your goals. If this person's been seeing the same therapist for a year, I don't presume that they probably are using insurance. I presume you're probably paying out of pocket. I'm a fan of that in this case because I believe that a therapist can be a stabilizing part of healthcare. We one of the interesting psychology facts was that your mental health can impact your physical health, right? Yep. And so I have long-term patients that I see long-term, even though we started working together to get them sober, and they've been sober now for 9 to 10 months, and like they may not necessarily need to work with me anymore, or we started working together for anxiety, or we started working together just for the general goal of self-discovery or something like that. And we're still meeting with each other long-term, and that's at their discretion. They choose to spend their money how they want to. This is a useful healthcare provider in my life. This is helping. Right. Sometimes it's just I want a life coach. I want somebody in the background to help me. So to the writer, you didn't ask when you should discontinue therapy, so I won't feel like I need to answer that. But at the end of the day, I think you can trust what you're seeing. If you're feeling better and your question is, can I trust this or is the other shoe going to drop? Yeah, life's dynamic, right? It's going to change.
Well, yeah.
The placebo effect of even having a therapist could ward off scary things that might come back if you didn't have that.
Yeah, to address the last sentence, the person is writing about, are these going to be lasting changes rather than feeling better for a couple months and then falling down again?
Right.
One thing I think is very, very important is to clearly explain what the expectation is. And when you're in therapy and when therapy is doing well or going well, we don't have the expectation that you're never going to have a relapse in symptoms.
Right.
We do have an expectation that those relapses are going to be less intense, further apart, and you're going to be able to bounce back quicker and be in control of those relapses of symptoms. So it's almost kind of like, the thing that I always like to tell folks is, by going into therapy and completing therapy or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have problems. It means hopefully that your problems are better problems. You've graduated to better levels of problems.
Right, but life still is happening. Right?
You're still going to have problems.
It's a testimony to the broad scope that a therapist has, that we're not just here to treat like a specific pathology, but sometimes we are here to be a safe place to explore your truth, and that could be a dynamic and long-lasting process. So, but to the writer, hey, thank you for telling everybody that you went to therapy for a year and that things are getting so better that you're worried. You're not sure whether to trust it. That's a good problem to have.
Exactly.
So congratulations on that. I think it's terrific that you're doing that work.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we discuss noisy neighbors. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Ben Don, and Ben has sent in his commercial. So, here it is. This week's episode is brought to you by all of the awesome Kickstarters that surpassed their goals ahead of ours. We salute these deserved ideas and their dedicated fans that have brought such great services to life. Let's take a look at a few of these. Number 1, potato salad. It seems anything goes on Kickstarter these days. In an effort to spur growth against a far more laissez-faire Indiegogo, new rules have opened the floodgates to giving creators quote-unquote support and freedom. So this guy has decided that meant making potato salad. For real.
Oh
Zach
my gosh.
Danger Brown started a campaign with the goal of raising $10 to make potato salad. He raised nearly $10,000 at last count.
That's incredible.
Number 2, Lionel Richie's head. Some Brits have raised 8,016 pounds, or 13,000 US dollars, to make a giant inflatable sculpture of Lionel Richie's head. Number 3, pirate pancakes. There's 6 of these, so hang on.
Oh my gosh. We're going to have to restart the song.
Pirate pancakes, because who doesn't love pirates and pancakes? Combine them for the ultimate breakfast. The pirate pancake griddle was successfully funded for $18,633.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Those who paid at least $93 each got their actual griddle. Everyone else had to settle for a 3D vector file to print their own.
Wow.
Number 4, a squirrel census. These are all the people that did better than us. Okay, number 4, a squirrel census. Josh O'Connor, field commander, and a team of other quote-unquote scientists led a project to create infographic posters based on quote-unquote research data they took on the Inman Park squirrels in Atlanta, Georgia. The project actually raised nearly $9,000.
What?
Backers didn't even get a poster unless they pledged at least $30 for the project.
Oh my god.
Number 5, launch a TARDIS into space.
Oh my gosh.
There were several attempts to send a real TARDIS into space. Doctor Who fans gave nearly $90,000 to make one of these attempts a reality.
$90,000.
No word about whether this actually happened.
Of course it didn't.
Or still
Somebody
will
got
happen.
$90,000.
The last Twitter page for the campaign hasn't updated since February. He also adds that Kickstarter clearly states that it is the creator's job, not Kickstarter's, so don't go to them to get your money back to complete the project. And
my gosh.
number 6, this watermelon holder. Never drop your watermelon again. For those times when you need to haul a watermelon around, there's this contraption. This campaign only got $332 of its $25,000 goal. Oh well, we'll just have to keep carrying our watermelons the old-fashioned way. So, thank you to Ben Don for that.
If you'd like to join Ben Don, you can go and actually support the show, unlike the Kickstarter money, which we had to give back. You can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up for as little as $1. Again, that's www.patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about nosy neighbors.
Noisy neighbors. I have a neighbor living next door to me that yells, screams, bursts of unusual guttural noises, talks to himself, plays loud music. When I hear him talking to himself, it's incoherent. I suspect bipolar or schizophrenia. I am not engaging with him. I have contacted the owner to no avail. I feel so sorry for him. Based on what I've described, do you have a diagnosis? Yeah, headphones.
No.
Put on headphones? Oh, I guess that'd be a treatment.
No diagnosis, but that might be my grandfather.
Okay. It just sounds like Granddad that he's...
It sounds like something Grandpa would do. Yeah, this is a tough one because I actually had a very similar experience with this.
Okay.
Back when I was when I was living in my apartment, there was my apartment building kind of backed up to a wall, and on the other side of that wall was a neighborhood.
Okay.
And there was a guy who lived over there that would have these like schizophrenic breaks, and he would go out and he'd be in the middle of the road and he would just be yelling at people that weren't there. He would be, and it was always in the morning too. It was always usually like right around 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and he would just be yelling at people that weren't there, and it was kind of one of those situations where it's like, God, what do?
Right.
You call the police. The police aren't going to do anything. It's not really a police issue. If
He
he's
has to
not
be
a danger to himself or someone else,
right? It could just be a symptom.
And then if he doesn't have family that's around, then what do you do?
Yeah, I think that's really tricky. And what's interesting about this question is I think a lot of people in society have experienced a version of this. It's one thing to hear it through your walls,
Sure.
because your next door neighbor who is housed is behaving in this way, and it being enough that you're worried about them. But I think a lot of us have driven down the street, and seen somebody walking down the sidewalk, pushing a shopping cart, yelling at themselves, or speaking to a voice outside in the world, or see them at a stoplight, doing the same thing. Right. So obviously, writer, I would imagine that even as you wrote this, you probably knew that we're not going to render a diagnosis.
Correct.
We wouldn't feel super comfortable doing the D word without actually having assessed the patient. But this kind of behavior, a person who might be having a psychotic break or speaking to things that aren't there, or shouting belligerent, kinds of phrases or loud noises or words, that could be a symptom of schizophrenia. Bipolar is less likely. There is such a thing as bipolar with psychotic features, right. But you'd still have to differentially diagnose away from schizophrenia. And based on these symptoms, as psychotic as they probably sound, or bizarre, that would probably line up more with either schizophrenia or some kind of psychotic disorder. Yeah.
And I think one thing that I always encourage people to kind of consider and think about when they're in this situation, as far as not just diagnosing it, but what do we do about it?
Right. I think the more important thing.
Right. And one thing I would always encourage people to really consider is take a real honest internal look at yourself as far as where your emotions are and what your reason is for why you need to do something about it.
Yes.
Because in that situation that I had, where my neighbor down the street, me having some kind of thought of, well, somebody needs to do something, I kind of caught myself. I'm like, well, why? Mm-hmm. If he's not a danger to anybody.
Right.
He's not a danger to himself. He's not a danger to anybody else.
Right. He's off-putting.
My need to feel like I need to do something comes from my feeling insecure about it.
Yeah.
And my worry about my own personal safety. And I kind of had to realize, he's fine. He's yelling. The noise, I get that. The noise can be very annoying, especially if he's a next door neighbor and you're sharing a wall.
Right. Yeah, and I give you credit for that. I actually think, first, I'm really glad you brought that up, because sometimes we've had that situation where a person is very worried and says something must be done. And there's been times when we as clinicians have to tell them, a person has the right to treat or not treat a medical illness as well as a mental health illness. Now, if they do become incapable of caring for themselves, including feeding themselves or even good hygiene, then we as clinicians acting on behalf of the social good and the individual will presume that they can't take care of themselves. And that's whenever we will probably take action against their will. But I still like, Nick, that you brought that up, because a lot of people don't understand that you may have to live in the tension of a person just having that. And another thing that I might add is autism.
Right.
Autism often has associated with it symptoms similar to what we're hearing described here. And again, besides that person receiving some higher amount of sedation or medication, it might not be a symptom they can necessarily get rid of.
Right.
And there may be families that just live with that.
Yeah, I've heard that before from parents of autistic children who, they have to go through that. And again, it comes back to people, they feel uncomfortable and they expect, well, somebody has to do something because I feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And it's like we have to realize that, no, your discomfort in this situation maybe isn't a reason why anybody needs to do anything.
Correct. Now, to the writer, obviously, we're not impugning your character.
Right.
We're trying to illuminate the general discomfort with these symptoms.
Yeah.
And I guess normalize it to the extent that these symptoms can be normalized, and at least offer, a broader perspective. Now, having said that, in this scenario, it would not be improper for you to dial 311. Which is the non-emergency police line, and many cities and states also have 211. And 211 is specifically for mental health, and that's a place where you can just report the information, and maybe they'll send a healthcare provider or a police officer to do a wellness check just to visit with the person in that house. And that actually is a positive thing that I would not say is stigmatizing or negative. I think that that's good public work, because in a lot of cases, if a person isn't well at home, only you, the neighbor, would notice.
Right,
exactly. And really, you ought to let us know, and then let a professional assess, and they may come over to you and say, hey, there's nothing that can be done, this person's safe. But if not, I'd rather a professional come see them.
Right.
I know that in Las Vegas, in Clark County, where we live, there is now a shrink squad. That is actually, you can call T11 and they can actually go to the scene of any situation and do an assessment right there. And it's a mobile assessment. Are they called
the shrink squad?
They should be, Nick. They should be. And you know what? I lodged that complaint right now.
I'm imagining
I keep
the
pointing
uniform,
out to you where the word shrink shows up. Like Ghostbusters? They should have Ghostbusters uniform.
I imagine a one-piece suit, very form-fitting. So, I don't know. I think silver with a blue V someplace.
Yes,
I don't know.
or they should have leotards,
right.
or Star Trek outfits.
Yeah.
Just come running out with like Geiger counters.
Yeah.
Hello, we're here to assess your mental health.
But
that's a great question, Ryder. I'm glad you wrote in. I would encourage you to actually contact a non-emergency public service just to let them know, and that way that person can make a decision about whether to visit.
Right, and you're not going to know whether or not somebody's in danger until it's assessed.
Correct.
So that's
and don't be afraid to go knock on their door. And, actually, to this point, I wanted to make a point about something you said when we were talking about the homeless person that you might see on the side of the road, because co-occurring disorders, which is addiction plus mental illness, often do lead to homelessness. That's a huge demographic who ends up homeless, and they're untreated. And so they're often doing things that seem bizarre or seem mentally ill. I have this theory that the entire Hollywood horror trope of zombie apocalypse is actually harnessing civilized humanity's fear of the mentally ill homeless person.
Oh.
That's my theory. I think that it capitalizes on, oh my gosh, crazy, scary, unclean person running at me, frothy at the mouth, going to bite me, hurt me. And I think that that's what the zombie apocalypse thing is ultimately doing. And if I really could sink my teeth into that, I would analyze it to the point of saying maybe we shouldn't even have those movies, because maybe they do increase the stigma of those who are actually mentally ill and homeless. But I don't know that I can get a lot of people on my side to believe that.
I don't know if I'm even
I wouldn't slam dunk it. But I think that there's an argument to be made.
But I do agree, and I've made this argument before in the past, that's why schizophrenia made such a good topic for movies.
Right.
Because we didn't understand it.
Right.
And things that we don't understand, if we don't understand it, then Hollywood can turn it into anything.
Right.
And it turns it into this thing where you're on a murderous rampage, And then as we start to learn more about it, then we're realizing that, like, well, no, it's nothing like that. But now we've already created a stigma that we have to fight against.
Yes.
Because it was something that made for a good movie.
I agree. No, I actually think that the Hollywood topic is a whole nother subject.
Yeah,
but
that's
to the writer, great
day.
Question, and call in some support, and or go knock on their door, man.
Yeah,
and don't be scared to do that. It's okay. You're safe. Just check and tell them, hey, I'm your neighbor, and I've been listening at your windows, and I've been hearing weird things, and I'm the propriety police, and I'm going to check on things. Can you please wear a shirt?
Yeah, exactly.
But great question.
Thank you for writing in.
So we have reached the part of the show where we do announcements and apologies and thank our Patreons. It is officially the first week of July, and so we definitely are going to take a second to thank all of our THERAPODs to the extent that Nick got the list right, so we'll find out in a second. But before...
let's just assume I didn't.
Let's assume you didn't, and I have no way to check because we're here in my office and I don't have the ability to pull up the Patreon.
I'm pretty sure the THERAPODs are right. New THERAPALs.
Probably. Well, no, we've never acknowledged all the THERAPALs. Oh, yeah, new ones?
Yeah,
I don't think there's any new
we
ones
had any this week. Okay.
But whatever list we're about to read of the THERAPODs, I guess that will be all that remains after the other people who didn't get listed revoke their pledge. Yeah. So this will probably be accurate one way or the other. But before we do, I have a couple of apologies. Dear International House of Pancakes, I am sorry that I said that the smiley face that you have done under your IHOP logo looks like it is crying pancake frosting.
The Twitter responses to that have been great.
Oh, did you see what, I think it was Scoop John B. Yeah. Did you see what he did? He put it to music.
Yeah, I did. That was pretty good.
Oh, it was great. I don't know how he did it, but it made the point, I think. Dear Tibetan Buddhism, I apologize that when the Dalai Lama said that the next Dalai Lama should be an attractive female, that I agreed because I believed it would heighten my sexual arousal during my Dalai Lama role play. Namaste. Those are my apologies for this week, Nick.
As an announcement, I just want to say congratulations to Manu from Brazil. She got both of our Wikipedia entries right from the last episode.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, on our Patreon, she guessed both correctly. Yep. So, considering one of them was a Brazilian soccer player, I feel like she was set up.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It was Pele.
You know what? I take back.
Yeah. You know what? You'll get half credit.
Yeah, half credit.
Of course, you knew the other one. So we do want to thank our Patreons who support the show at patreon.com/therapy. We want to thank our THERAPODs who give it at least the $5 level up to $19.99, and we want to thank I don't know if it's any particular order. It looks like it's alphabetical.
It is.
Brad Kefauver, Brian Lehman, Brooks Lyle, Chelsea Saracen, Corey Owens, Curtis Kiwi Fruit Scoop Hanlon, Dan Martin, David Pollock, Easy Whip, Fred Bashara Jr., Gavin Bristow, Heather Psychotic Scoop Crace, Ian Whitefall, Ice Blue Scoop, Jackie and Dustin, a.k.a. Scoopy and the Beast, Scoopy Jess, Joseph Pengrazio, Carrie Terhark, a.k.a. Nick's sister, Kate Keller, Lori Eltzroth, Leon Kassab, Linda Brandmeier, Lindsay Bashara, Lindsay Borders, Manuela Musacchio, Malaya, Mike, Okie Scoop, Peter Van Pelt, Richard Bruins, Robert Paulson, Scoop John B., whose Twitter's on fire, Scoopaholic, Scoopiter Ascending, Scoopstronaut, Stacy Westerlin, and Tracy Replogle, a.k.a. my mom.
And we want to especially thank our bosses, the Elite Eight and mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the TheraProducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Chairman of the Board, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop Violon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, and ex officio board member Ellie O'Dare.
If you would like to hear this episode uncut with our bonus stuff before and after the show and unedited, you can enjoy our also spontaneous side projects, including Book Club, which is due for a lot of fixing. Yeah. You can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up for as little as $1. And thank you all for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and now at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at www.podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangerman.
I'm Thomas Jefferson.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Bing, bing. Was Thomas Jefferson the answer to the hot dog?
It was not.
Story? Oh, it was a Virginian who was a member of the Senate
Yeah.
and an original signer of the Declaration of Independence?